Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out to the library on such a cold day. I am Susan Byer. I am the executive director here at the Allen County Public Library, and I want to welcome you to the screening and panel discussion today. When Sharon reached out to me to see if the library would be interested in screening this documentary on food insecurity and food deserts here in Fort Wayne and Allen County, I was all in immediately because this is a big problem that needs a big solution. And I think something that's so special about public libraries is that it brings people together from across the community and from different agencies and organizations. Great minds come together to come up with some great solutions and so have some great dialogue. Here at Allen County Public Library, we see how food insecurity and food deserts impacts Allen County and Fort Wayne. We at the library serve free summer lunches to children each summer during our summer learning program. Last year in 2021, in a 2-month period, we served 18,000 free lunches to children. So we see it firsthand every day, and I am so excited to learn more, and I'm so excited that we're going to have these experts here that are going to have a really engaging conversation. Thank you so much for showing up today. Thank you so much for caring about such a really important issue in our community. And I'm going to turn it over to Sharon Tubbs with Health Visions Midwest. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Susan. I appreciate the opportunity, myself and my team at Health Visions Midwest, we appreciate this opportunity to be here at the library, debuting what we believe is an educational documentary and a quality project that we want to enlighten and stir conversation. So I want to take just a couple of minutes to talk about why we did this, okay? Obviously, Health Visions Midwest is not a film producer. We're not a production agency. We are an agency that exists to empower and equip people to live healthier lives. So while we're not film producers, we are advocates. Advocates for underserved communities, people who don't necessarily have a voice. And we appreciate you coming out because we hope that maybe you'll become an advocate too. So, I asked the question, or I posed this question, why did we do this? Many people that we advocate for live in food desert neighborhoods. And as community advocates, we know that food deserts and food insecurity are major contributors to health disparities in our community, in our nation. Yet the topics are too often discussed in silos among talking heads and officials at conferences and inside boardrooms. We wanted to nurture broader community dialogue, including residents most affected by these social ills. And we know that people watch films. People watch movies. People like watching things over the internet. In fact, while we want to thank you guys who braved this cold weather, I don't know why we decided to do this on the coldest day of the year. Why did we decide? I'm blaming Susan. She knew that it would be the coldest day of the year when we picked this date. But we know that you've braved this cold, and we thank you for your in-person attendance. We also have people who are watching by live stream, and so we thank you as well. Our intention is for everyone to come together, communicate, converse, dialogue, so that in time, we may come up with some solutions about food deserts and food insecurity. That's not to say that we are the forerunners in this issue. There have been many who have discussed food deserts and are in fact doing some great things right now. And you'll hear a little bit about that in the documentary as well as in the panel discussion. So, like I said, people like to watch films, and so here we are. I want to thank, before I forget, Ray Stoip. He's somewhere out here in the audience. He is our videographer for whom this definitely was a labor of love. And I'll get into thanking everybody else later on. But while we're sitting here on this coldest day of the year, I want to call on your imagination. Imagine that it's blistery cold outside, which it is, and you live in a neighborhood where the closest place to get food is the Marathon gas station down the street. Imagine seeing people on TV and on Facebook tout recipes with grilled organic vegetables, fresh cut chicken and salmon. In these trendy days, maybe a vegan broth, a vegan soup to keep warm. But you can't afford any of it. Imagine that you don't have a car, or maybe your brakes gave out, or maybe you simply don't have enough gas to spare. Not for a 15-minute drive to Kroger or Walmart, miles away where you can get some fresh fruits and vegetables. No, you don't have it right now. So what do? You bundle up for a short walk down to that gas station. You pick up a few hot dogs, maybe, or some canned sausage, can of pork and beans perhaps, filled with sodium, because that is the best you can do right now to feed the ones you love. Now imagine that that is your regular routine. Imagine, basically, that you are a person living in a food desert neighborhood in Fort Wayne, Indiana. How healthy do you think you would be? That is a question I leave with you, ladies and gentlemen, as we watch the Food Exodus project. Fort Wayne, Indiana, a city that has gained national recognition. It's been designated as an all-America city. It's been called one of our nation's best communities to raise children. And some officials ranked Fort Wayne among the most livable cities in the nation. These accolades are deserved in some respects. But at least one ingredient increasingly robs some people in this mid-sized Midwestern community of a basic human need. Food. Fresh food. Fruits and vegetables. The kind of food that enables people to live healthy lives. It's a simple ingredient, yet one so detrimental to life.
The USDA defines a food desert by the distance to a full grocery store, and a full grocery store has to have produce, they have to have dairy, they have to have meat, and they have to have grains to be considered a full grocery. So specialty stores do not count, and it's also by income of the neighborhood. So they judge it by access to healthy food, basically. So in Fort Wayne, we have 5 zip codes that are defined as a food desert. And when we broke that down further, there's actually 13 census tracts that are qualified per the USDA requirements to be called a food desert. And that really just means they have very little access to healthy food. So what that translates into in Fort Wayne and Allen County is 110,000 residents live in a food desert. So that's a third of our population that have low access to healthy foods.
Health officials, local experts, and historians agree that this issue, the lack of healthy food, affects the very health of people who live in food desert communities. Others have a hard time getting any food at all. They are what is called food insecure, lacking a consistent supply of adequate food.
Come on down!
They wait in long lines for free giveaways and for subsidized farm market programs. Simply put, for many, food, especially healthy food, is just too hard to come by.
Moving away from individually owned grocery stores that are nestled within communities to more regional grocery stores that are part of big chains has made it so that a lot of the establishments, the grocery store establishments that were traditionally embedded in our community are no longer here. And so what has that been replaced with? And so you can see that we have a steady supply of gas stations with convenience stores attached to them. We have a steady supply of liquor stores with not necessarily food attached to them, but some grab-and-go stuff. We have an increase with those gas stations, local restaurants, some dine and dash kind of facilities, not sit-down establishments. And so the proliferation of other retail entities have come in and took the place of what I would think of as the grocery store outlets, or the independent or the individually owned grocery stores that used to proliferate within our community. And so that's left the community to think about health issues when we're really thinking about the way in which the persistent levels of health disparities in the Black community, Black and brown communities, associated with chronic illnesses around diabetes, heart issues, high blood pressure, and the like.
Much of what Americans eat really is risky for their health, whether they know it or not. We have really unprecedented levels of chronic disease in our nation. And if you add in then a financial barrier and a barrier to access food, we are really creating more chronic disease disproportionately in key neighborhoods. So we need to pull back and really think about that. And with more and more food insecurity happening, we have to think about what is happening. Our adults, they have a higher level of chronic disease, diabetes, heart disease, risk of stroke, obesity. And our kids especially have delayed growth, impairment. They might have more chronic disease like anemia or asthma. They might have more issues with anxiety, aggression, and they struggle in school a little bit when they're food insecure. So if you know what really does prompt disease and the environmental factors that affect people getting access to healthy food, you know what, it is key that we as communities work on access and create an easier access to the very life-sustaining foods they need. So a lot of times you hear that where you live, zip code-wise, is more important than your genetic code. And the reason being is that, again, the environmental constraints are big. There may not be a grocery store, there may not be a farm market, there may not be bus lines or transportation to your local doctor, so there's access issues, that there may not be safe neighborhoods to exercise. So health becomes quickly impaired, and we know that our neighborhoods, by and large, are suffering from higher rates of chronic disease like diabetes and heart disease, and they have shorter lifespans. And so we need to really address health equity in a big way.
April Erksleben recently earned a bachelor's degree in human services. She was working at a local Burger King until she could find her dream job helping people in a local shelter or clinic. She lives with her 2 youngest children in the 46803 zip code, where plenty of obstacles can hinder healthy living.
It's all about the location. There's nothing right here in the area where I'm at. Even if I want to go to Walmart, I still got to drive 10 minutes, at least 10, 15 minutes at least to get to a grocery store, a real grocery store. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. If you want to save some money, but if you want to spend $30 on your family's meal, go ahead and hit the corner store up, go ahead and hit up Dollar General, and they're going to charge you. And yes, yeah.
Even the cost of gas and transportation can contribute to the lack of food access.
I drive all the way to work on the other side of town. So when I get over here to this side of town, it's like, okay, I know I got to save my gas to get to work. Let me go to the closest spot to do what I need to do because I know work is important.
Odalis Gonzalez was on maternity leave after birthing a newborn daughter. She had been working in a senior living facility. She lives now with her family in the 46806 zip code. She likes the summertime in Fort Wayne because she can shop at local farm markets and get quality produce at low prices.
This is my first year in the market, and it being so impressive and so helpful for my family. I got 5 kids, and I have to feed in, and the good way you feeding your kids is coming to the market. You got everything fresh and everything good for the kids. This is the salad that I made it for the farm. It's lettuce, it's spinach, it's cucumbers, radish. I got corn. I got really, really healthy and really quality for eat. It's not sucky. It's not too watery. It's in the points that you really want to eat. Over there, they offer the fruit as well. My kids love it. And sometimes teaching the kids, when you want something sweet, try the switch for fruits. They make it more better for you. You got fiber, you got your vitamins, and it's still your belly full. The candies only giving you, be honest, calories, and your sugar is coming up. Healthy is, got 2 ways for me. One, for the way my grandma showed me and teach me how to eat. And the second one is for healthy. For it's coming a lot of illness in my family, like diabetes, blood pressure, heart problems. Me right now, they have a thyroid problems, arthritis, and all that kind of illness that you don't eat the right way. Later, the future, couple years more, it's gonna affecting you. And that's I've been teaching my kids to eat healthy. That's when they be more older, they're not being suffered much like us going to suffer.
Health contributes to so much more than our physical bodies. It's a major factor in our economic stability.
You may have insurance, you may be a part of the working poor, and you may have some insurance, but you better not get sick. And if you have these kinds of chronic issues, it can actually take you out of the labor market prematurely. So you have people in our community who are in their mid to late 50s having to exit the labor economy because of health issues. And then what happens to that family's income, the kind of social economic status of that family then declines because the wage earner is out of the labor economy. These things are not disconnected in my mind.
One here has,
Angela Leon is 45 years old. She says she left her waitress job and her home after being diagnosed with cancer and having to undergo treatment and surgeries. Today, she is the caretaker for a friend. They live in a motel.
it's not easy, especially living here. Just the food selections, you have to, try your best to make sure you eat healthy and not. A lot of people don't, like I said, we got the crock pot, we got the skillet. Otherwise, a lot of people just eat microwave meals, and they're not healthy. They're expensive. I can take almost anything down here on this shelf, between the canned vegetables, the chicken, the noodles, and mix anything up and make something. I have. You ready? Mm-hmm. I got here, canned chicken, canned tuna, got box meals. I've got all kinds of canned vegetables and fruits. So, I mean, you know, or just take like some mashed potatoes and mix up a can of chicken and some gravy. We have a Kroger's here that's about 3 miles away. Then Coldwater Walmart and Apple Glen Walmart are both about 2.5 miles away from us. We are on the bus route, thankfully. Fortunately, we do have a vehicle, but when we don't, there's always somebody around that you can get a ride from, or, you know, try not to have to walk too far to make sure that we get food.
Food deserts and families living without enough food are not issues unique to Fort Wayne. People in communities nationwide experience these same challenges. But it wasn't always this way. Grocery stores with well-stocked produce sections were once plentiful in local neighborhoods. The question is, where did the fresh food go and why?
When I was reminiscing about what was happening with food, 50, 60 years ago, I realized that we were not in a food desert. We were in a food oasis, okay? From where I lived, which was just a few blocks from here, we went to there were a couple of little mom and pop grocery stores. One was a block down our own street, Brownies, stayed in this area for probably 40, 50 years. Behind us, we could take a little cut through the backyard and across Eliza Street to White's grocery store. And I remember at both of those grocery stores, we used to be able to, what they call, run a tab. You could run in, pick up what you needed, they'd put it on the account, and make the account clear at the end of the month when your checks came in and things of that nature. So those are where we got most of our groceries, on a regular basis. But we also did our larger shopping just across the street here, where U-Haul is now, used to be an A&P.
Many shared Denise's experiences with fresh food growing up in Fort Wayne.
I am a native of Fort Wayne. I've been here ever since I was a year old, and I can remember as a child the different stores that were more available. I can remember Maloli's Grocery. I can remember Kaplan's even on the corner of Lewis and Lafayette. I can remember the Three Sisters and their little family market that they had. But it seemed, when I was growing up, we had access to food in our neighborhoods much more than today. And the other thing is, we had stores that were larger as well as stores that were smaller, but we also had a lot of locally owned stores. Today, it seems everything that we have in terms of food provision is given by someone that's from corporate, from somewhere out of the city. So even the money that we're spending so freely on food, which we must have to live, it really is going out of our communities very, very quickly.
The shift from neighborhood stores to corporations happened for myriad reasons.
If you think about residential patterns, where you would have Black communities or a neighborhood that is bound in certain kinds of ways geographically on the south side of town, central side of centrally located in the city, those would be populated by certain ethnic populations. And so what marketers would do is would target the products to those particular neighborhoods. And so that's called segmented marketing. So segmented marketing, for a while after, in the 1950s, really took off, right? It really took off. But as patterns started to, residential patterns started to be shaken up when desegregation came in the rise of the Black middle class and the rise of the middle class in general in America itself, then those patterns of residential patterns started to create new marketing designs in advertisement and in product location. So what I mean by that is, as you start to see the success of the civil rights movement and then the disaggregation of Black classes from a concentrated neighborhood itself. So, for example, in Fort Wayne, in South Central, in the central part of the city, you would have a congestion of economic classes within the central city location. So, some of us grew up with around teachers in the schools. Sister Miss Green was a teacher in the elementary school. She lived right down the street from me. She was the elementary school teacher. And then you would have the doctor who would live not too far outside of the community. And so but when the segregation and redlining and housing patterns shifted in the creation of suburbia, right? So you had not just white flight outside of these kinds of inner city communities, central city communities, but you had black middle class who were also in a position to follow the market, the housing market, in all of the advantages that were associated with suburbia, better schools, better retail outlets, hospitals, shopping areas, all of that followed that trend towards the creation of suburbia. Those corporate retail magnates also saw those patterns shift, and what they started to do is to start to move away from segmented marketing, targeting products to particular segmented communities, to a regionally focused marketing strategy that traced the movement and the growth of suburbia itself.
We hear a lot about food deserts, and one of the things I hear people saying, well, why don't they just move where the grocery stores are, or things of that nature? You have to realize that this was not a desert even 30 years ago, okay? One by one, you would see certain things begin to happen in the community that foretold the change as it was coming about, okay? I call it a drip by drip by drip sort of scenario, okay? Most of those stores that I mentioned were locally owned and operated. So that meant that the decision makers were part of this community. These were family businesses. They passed down from one generation to the next generation. And somewhere along the line, probably closer in the 70s and 80s, that next generation did not want to stick around here. They did not want to stay in that family business. They were looking for other sorts of things to find their way in the world. So the business may have closed down because there was no one to take it on. But as that was happening here, and it was happening elsewhere in the community, and also in the rural area, big box stores saw an opportunity to get their foot in the door for starting a business that they could control and operate.
Many ask the question, did racism play a role in the proliferation of food deserts in Fort Wayne?
Sometimes racism is greenism. It's like what makes money makes a decision, and underlying what makes money is probably a bit of racism. It was almost like de facto segregation. It just happened to be that other decisions that had been made also affected these little stores and the shopping patterns that came about. For example, when just before I was born, there was still officially redlining and de facto segregation in housing. My father actually, after World War II, he was a naval vet, came back to Fort Wayne with muster out pay, war bonds, and things of that nature. And in the late 1940s, just as the federal government was declaring those racial lines for housing illegal, my father was able to purchase land and build the first home by an African American family, new home in this community. Like I said, just a few blocks from here. So for a long time in Fort Wayne, African Americans tended to live along the railroad tracks, maybe 4 blocks one way or the other, but not that far, and primarily on the west side of town, out by Lindenwood Cemetery, in a place called Westfield. So even though what we're standing in now looks like an urban community, 50, 60 years ago, you could see whites living along the 2 thoroughfares, blacks living basically between the 2 tracks. I distinctly remember at my age when blacks were just beginning to move south of Pontiac and then south of Rudisill. So that change has been just in my lifetime. So, is it racial? Is it not? It's hard to say because they're so intertwined with how things were pulled together.
Today, grassroots organizations and more organized efforts through government agencies and healthcare institutions strive to meet demands for healthy food within underserved communities.
I'm excited to announce that our store, Utopian Community Grocery, has finally opened for our community. We think it's very important at this time in our lives for us to return to people taking ownership of their own health and making sure that we provide for ourselves healthy food. So we are here to do that. At least in this community, we want to provide healthy, fresh food all year round. So that's one of the major goals for Utopian Community Grocery.
We are here in a food desert. We are 3.1 miles away from the nearest grocery store. The food availability that we have here is really up to some of those corner stores and those small, almost like gas station type stores. And this project was really started because the city of Fort Wayne recognized that there's not affordable produce available here on a consistent, persistent presence. And they wanted to be able to be a source of affordable, fresh produce here in the Renaissance Point neighborhood.
Years ago, we had decided that the city owned the vacant fire station there on Winter Street. And it seemed like the perfect location to offer some sort of a food resource in the neighborhood, in the Renaissance Point neighborhood that we were focused on working in. And so we used some of the federal resources to renovate the building and also set up the actual garden operation behind it.
When we first started this project, we started asking what the community wants because we recognized that we weren't getting that involvement that we really wanted at the beginning. We weren't getting the engagement that we wanted from the community. And this was a community center. That's what Johnny May had started with her legacy, was making this a community center. And when we started asking the community what they wanted, is they wanted a safe place to be able to come and exist and have community and meet their neighbors. They really they wanted that community, and we want to be able to provide that for them. So most of what we do really hinges on that desire of the community to want a safe place. And it's shown too on when we have the markets on Fridays. When the kids get out of school, they come here, they play football, they play Frisbee, we give them popsicles, we walk around the gardens with them. But it's an opportunity for us to give them a safe place to exist. We know that a lot of parents, they don't allow the children to go anywhere else without them except for here. This is a really great project for the city of Fort Wayne and for Purdue Extension to be able to leverage some of those really great dollars and bring a good resource to the community. Understanding that this is a way to support. We're we're not making money off of this. We really just want to be here to support the community because it's such a great community. There's so many wonderful assets here.
In the pot. You know, I'm thankful to be able to live so close to the garden where I'm able to get my fresh vegetables. You know, the garden is very good for my family. We haven't been eating no fresh squash or zucchini, wouldn't think about buying it from the grocery store until I started shopping at the garden. We have fresh greens. We just had fresh greens on, what day was that, y'all? Just the other day. When I barbecued, like on Sunday, we had fresh collards, and I did very well with those, might I say. Right now, I have a roast going where I have zucchini from the garden. I have onions from the garden. See, what else did I put in there? From the peppers from the garden, carrots from the garden. Yes, the garden is great. The garden is helping the Southside community eat healthy. Other than that, we probably wouldn't be eating as healthy as we are. You know, very thankful for the garden. It helps out a lot.
The HEAL initiative, which stands for Healthy Eating, Active Living, is another major effort. It is also one of the longest standing and consistent the city has seen. It involves pop-up farm markets in food desert neighborhoods during the summer and early fall, as well as grant funding for cooking classes in underserved communities.
We know for a fact you are what you eat. So we know that eating healthy foods like fresh produce, grains, those type of things has a direct impact on the rate of diabetes, obesity, hypertension, heart disease. But what it really translates in for our youth is behavioral problems. So you have a higher rate of ADHD and behavioral problems because they get addicted to sugar and preservatives and all those things that really are kind of toxic for the body.
Odalis, who shopped at HEAL Farm Markets, says it's more cost-effective to eat healthy because she doesn't have to pay for medications to overcome illnesses that could have been prevented.
The money I'm spending and the farmer is not being related for any meds, any healthy problems, but I'm being eating the right way. And I'm being eating the wrong way, I pay double. And it's not making any sense.
Many of the farm market programs, including these and others, close in late fall, leaving people like April, Odalis, and Angela with fewer fresh food options. But some efforts, such as year-round farm markets, Community Harvest Food Bank, Associated Churches, and the Utopian Grocery, are striving to close the gap during the winter months.
Really, our involvement has been, funding in other entities that, can get food access to people who maybe don't have it. Public transportation, investments in transportation services, and those sorts of things. And now I think we want to have perhaps a more direct involvement. We've changed a little bit how we've operated. I think Johnny May farm in terms of having direct access to the food, but also education on how to use it. And I think we also aspire to be directly involved in developing a grocery in the area, in the Southeast Food Desert area, to have fresh foods, meats, and everything that people would want to have from a grocery store. So I think our involvement will become even more direct in the future. As a way to address this food desert is, having the fresh, supply of food, and transportation is a big part of that, and that's one of the things that creates a food desert. And so, having food available in close proximity, a walkable, whether a 15-minute type of neighborhood, is important to address that gap. And so, we, heard about a grocery that was developed in Toledo. With public sector, private sector partnership. And so we've gone there and, looked at it, and they've basically have a proven model of how a grocery can be, developed and constructed, if you will, and implemented in a way that meets the needs, but also, can ultimately achieve, from a financial or business perspective, some sort of sustainability. And so we have been working with the folks involved with the Toledo model. We've hired them and are, looking at their model and actually beginning to put those pieces together, including, getting partners, looking for funding, looking for a building, location, and those sorts of things. So we're really excited about the progress we've made, and have every hope that it will become a reality.
In today's literature, we know that the American style of eating, which is loaded with undesirable fats, refined carbohydrates, sugar, a lot of fried food, a lot of sodium, just keeps this vicious cycle going of unhealthy people. And it is getting to the point where it's unsustainable as far as healthcare costs in our nation. It creates shorter lifespans. And we know that, in pockets of our community that don't have access and knowledge and resources for healthy food, that it's even worse. So there is a big connection between diet and disease. They're powerfully linked. In fact, it's probably one of the most important lifestyle habits that people can really look into to change.
Teach people about how to cook healthy, and with the, do some cultural changing. Listen, culture will eat strategy every day. So you can think about these strategies all you want to. You can talk about, embedding grocery stores or food outlets or, farmers markets and all of these kinds of access to improved quality of food if you want to, but culture will undermine all of that. If we like ribs, if we fry our chicken, if we like to batter our food with flour and dip it and fry it in deep grease and turkey drumsticks, and that's a part of what we think about culture, right? If we think that's what Black cuisine and Black celebratory moments are, that unless you make a change in the culture, all of your strategies will fail. The positive way of looking at it is that now you know what you're really up against, right? Because at the end of the day, the interest, if you just want to say this naked interest of government, is you need citizens who are healthy. And you need healthy citizens because they provide the labor market. And healthy citizens in the labor market provide the tax basis for your survival of your community. If all of the infrastructure and the resources of the city government are undermined because you have unhealthy citizens who cannot participate in the labor market, then what you have is one single industry that becomes dependent on sick people. That's the healthcare industry, right? So the healthcare industry is dependent on sick people who themselves are not contributing economically. That's a recipe for a disastrous city, right? You can't build an economy or a city on that. So it's in the interest of the city to actually make some kind of intervention so that it can have the kind of citizenry that it can go out and then have entrepreneurship, and then all of the kind of development and the opportunities for advancement and forward progress can happen and be actually resourced by the human capital that you have. Poor, sick citizens, a poor, sick city.
And I think we're looking at serving a role as convener, participant, whatever gaps we need to fill is what we're going to do.
I started out talking about what happened to make this happen. It was like a drip, drip, drip sort of thing. And I really think it's going to be a drip, drip, drip sort of thing to make a turnaround. I think you got to start with things in your own backyard. You live here, grow your own food where you can. If you have a plot of ground, you know, in your backyard, there's some things that you can do now to grow tomatoes and herb gardens and things right where you are. Invest in community gardens like we're doing it with Fort Wayne Community Schools so that we have the fruits and vegetables locally produced here. It also teaches another generation how to do agricultural, you know, as a commodity and as a business. I think we have to educate ourselves so that we know what our options are and make better choices when we are buying foods and eating less processed food or fast food in our days. I think that we have to learn how to partner with those people who we didn't want to move into our neighborhood but are here and with the money. So we want to fight having more dollar stores or liquor stores or gas stations, but the ones that are already here, you've got to make them be part of the neighborhood. Have them work with you on perhaps doing a farmer's market day in their parking lots, and be active and walk the community. A lot of times we just drive through. We don't think in terms of what's happening in that. But just as I'm walking with a rollator right now, it's nice to know what the impediments are to others that have needs. So you can speak up with city council or other elected officials about what needs to happen. When you're walking in the neighborhood, you will see pockets of things that are happening, whether it's the gardens that I mentioned, or sometimes those little candy stores that we used to call them that would sell things. Perhaps they're selling cigarettes, we don't know, probably, but we'll see. But give them an opportunity to make a difference by also offering, you know, apples and oranges and a banana for $1 or something like that. So we're just going to have to start drip by drip with what we have. That will be a magnet to grow other things, and we'll see that we may not have the oasis that we used to have, but we won't be a desert forever. Time will change.
I want you all to see all the credits, so that's why I'm, these are our accolades. And thanks to the many people who contributed to that project and gave of their time and effort. All right, thank you. Okay, and I appreciate the clap. I'm ready now for my Academy Award. No, not at all, not at all. Now, like I said, we did that because we wanted to enlighten and we wanted to bring awareness and we wanted to educate and we wanted different people to be in the room who aren't normally in the room and in the conversation together. So now we're going to get ready for our panel discussion as our panelists come on up. And we're going to be able to ask them some questions, and I'm going to ask some questions, you're going to ask some questions, I hope. We've got some students here, which is awesome, yay, from Wayne High School. Come on, generals. Yeah, so we're so grateful for that. And we've got many people, I'm told, who are watching via live stream. So we are getting ready to ask some questions and to really begin to dig into this topic as a group. I did ask the residents who live in the food desert communities, in case you're wondering, in the neighborhoods, to be part of our panel today. But for various reasons, they could not. And so this conversation is going to continue. So we intend to have other programs where we're showing the documentary and where we're having a conversation, where we're partnering with different organizations. We intend to have more of those conversations, more of those programs. And so if you're interested, I ask that you would please let me know, and perhaps you can host a Food Exodus project documentary and conversation. So without further ado, as they say, we want to talk to some of our panelists. Now, each of you should have gotten a packet when you came in. Some of y'all didn't sign in. I went out there and looked, and I said, she didn't sign in, he didn't sign in. So when you go, when you leave, be sure to just check your name and sign in so I can tell the folks from Indiana Humanities, hey, look at all these people who came. If you got that packet though, you received some index cards in that packet. And so what I would like you to do is to write questions down on that index card, and there will be 2 team members on either side of the aisle. Could they raise your hand and come on down? Yeah, come on down. So there's Lupita on the left there, to my left, your right, and then Patricia is on this side. And so you will hand them the index cards when you fill that out. And I know y'all have some questions. I know, and I know some questions are going to be coming in from the live stream folks. You are not exempt. We want some questions to come in from you as well. I'm going to start with a little brief introduction and then some questions for our panelists. So, over here, we've got some esteemed folks. A few of them were in the documentary, a couple of them were not, but we know that they will contribute to this conversation. Like I said, we are not the first to talk about food deserts and food insecurity. This is a topic that has been going on and on for many years, and that people have been discussing and talking about and doing things about. There have been things, as you saw in the documentary, that have been done and things that are going to be done. So, to my left, we have panelist Kathy Worley. Kathy is a dietitian at Parkview Hospital. She has done great things on this issue, on this topic. She compiled a healthy cookbook for the Healthy Eating Active Living program, and has worked with various churches, nonprofit organizations in the community, as a Parkview co-sponsor along with the St. Joseph Community Health Foundation. I think Meg Disler is in the audience here, the executive director over there, who co-sponsor the HEAL program. And they train people to teach other people, to teach people in their communities to eat right. And so Kathy has been in the game for some time. All right, and then just as soon as she told me how to pronounce her first name, I forgot it again. I have known her for a number of years, right beside Kathy, but she's had a name change. And so I want to say Ani Wolpenry. Ani Wolpenry is a food systems and policy specialist. She is on the National Young Farmers Coalition Policy Committee as the Midwest BIPOC representative, okay? And so when she speaks, she can tell you a little bit more about that. And then beside her, we have Terry Thyssen. Terry is an extension educator at Purdue Extension. She specializes in horticulture and urban agriculture, and she and the extension support Johnny May Farm, the collaborative farm market here in Fort Wayne. And next to her, we have Dr. Andrea Robinson. She is the CD Administrator for Economic Development at the City of Fort Wayne. And next to her is my good friend Denise Porter. And Denise, I can't list all the things that she has done. It's been so many. As you saw in the documentary, She is kind of like a resident historian. I just gave her that title, and community advocate. She has taught people about eating well. She was a facilitator for the HEAL program. She teaches at Purdue. She does so much. So anyway, Denise, if you want to add something, I'm going to let you add it a little bit later on. So I want to just throw a couple of questions out here to get the juices flowing for this panel discussion. So the first one I want to ask is, okay, so there are already efforts underway to make food more accessible in Fort Wayne, okay? This is for any panelist who wants to answer it. We're talking about farm market programs, mobile partners, mobile pantries, excuse me. Yet food access remains a problem for many in our community. Why is this such a pervasive issue? And what can we as a community do to solve it? Who wants to be first? Come on now. Come on, panel discussion. Denise, okay, thank you, Denise.
Okay, I'll raise my hand then, okay. Okay, as Sharon said, you know, we've been around for a while, and I've been around longer probably than most people in this room. But I find that when you look at this as a problem, there are so many different pieces of the problem that you really need to talk to the person who has the problem to see what their thoughts are or what their impediments, what's stopping them from doing something. For example, I am now retired, but I was brought back from retirement to be a kind of like a resident advisor for a supportive housing community. Technically, we're only about 4.5, 5 blocks away from a major grocery store. But when you live in a community that those 4 or 5 blocks are not necessarily have sidewalks, there's not necessarily a way to get your groceries back from them if you walk. If you steal a shopping cart, it stops at the area at the end of that grocery lot. So you see people carrying plastic bags, which is a trash nuisance by itself, with the stuff falling, and they just say, forget it, I'm not gonna do it. I'm just gonna eat what's there, beg, borrow, or deal with somebody to get some things, to get a ride to the community harvest or other food banks, because even though you can almost see a grocery store, you don't have access to it.
Okay, that's good. We're getting down to some issues here. Kathy, you want to add?
I just want to say that a lot of times, too, when they do the food desert designations and definitions, they don't look at farm markets and community gardens and other assets that we have. So I think what I've seen is that some communities are doing what they call participatory mapping, which really means that they are asking community members to share where they get food, and then when people know more about food sources, they can access things other than the big grocery stores. But I would say too that you know, in low-income, low-access areas, you know, they even call it, there is a wage desert. I mean, I think when you look at the bottom of it, it is financial insecurity. People can't afford the healthy food. So there may be food, more food in a food desert than you think, but it's the wrong kind of food. It's the food that causes disease. And then the tricky part is, you know, when you eat foods that are very processed and they're lacking in nutrients, a lot of times food manufacturers, unfortunately, make them taste so good that people just keep eating and eating and eating, and it's almost like they have this addictive cycle going on. And so the very foods that they don't want are the ones they can afford, and again, they almost are like addicted to them. And you know, the sad testament is that people do rely on fast food, and I know like one stat I came across was people that rely on fast food have 7 times the risk of having a stroke before age 45, which is so sad. I think another thing too, just to add one more issue, is that we have farm subsidies in America that support the corn soybean industry to such a big degree, but we don't support production, research, and marketing of fruits and vegetables. So
Again, when so much of our U.S. government dollars are going to mass production of corn, soy, and wheat, those are used in the nutrient poor junk foods. So our food prices are high for fruits and vegetables. They've gone up 40%. And processed food and industrialized meat has actually gone down 20 to 30% over the last many decades. So that's significant and adds to the issue as well.
Thank you, Kathy. Now, I see some questions flowing in, and so I'm just going to ask just a couple more. And yeah, thank you. Thank you. All right, I see some questions flowing in, so I'm going to ask just a couple more, then I'm going to get to your questions. There are just a couple things I want to hit on real quick. There was some news in the documentary that the city of Fort Wayne is working to establish a grocery store in Southeast by 2023. That's next year, y'all. And so that's interesting. And so I want Andrea Robinson to speak to that just for a little bit.
Certainly, thank you. Yeah, I've been lucky enough to be involved with a project, which right now we're just calling it Southeast Grocery Store. But as Nancy Townsend, the Director of Community Development, mentioned in the video, we have actively engaged with a consultant out of Toledo. They have developed a grocery store model that is very similar to the model, or our area of town, Southeast Fort Wayne, that would benefit from a grocery store like that. So we have hired them as a consultant. We've been having weekly meetings with them. We've taken tours. I mean, I think several of us on the panel have been to Toledo to visit Market on the Green. And, you know, right now we're really fortunate that we have so many people, so many businesses and nonprofits that have come to us and said, how can we help? And so we're in the process of, you know, finalizing those agreements. We have very active community support. We just really need to dot all our I's and cross all our T's and get that agreement ready, because, you know, we're committed to getting this done. And so I believe that Mayor Henry will have an announcement about that very shortly.
All right, we will be waiting on that announcement, but it looked like you just announced it. So
I think it's
Didn't
coming.
she just announce it? Okay.
It's coming.
Thank you so much for that.
Absolutely.
I'm going to ask one other quick thing, and then, like I said, I'm going to go into this, these questions. I see that we have some questions on the live stream as well. Ani, you have some different terminology that you want to bring to light about food deserts. Can you speak to that briefly?
Yes, thank you. So in the food justice and environmental justice work that I'm involved in, we're constantly evaluating our word choice and how we frame things, because how we speak about it can change how people perceive something. And the language food deserts has come to be quite familiar with a lot of people, but we've actually, how do I say it? In discussing it, we believe that the term food desert implies something occurring naturally, and that's not the case. And so in the national groups that I'm involved in, the conversation has shifted to addressing it as food apartheid, which is a bit of what was talked about or touched on in the documentary. And in years past, there was a bit of a hesitancy to use that type of language for, you know, the fear of you know, perhaps upsetting people or coming across as a bit intense, I suppose. And in these later years, we've come to the decision that it is important, the words that we use to describe this, because these food deserts, they didn't just happen. These are intentional results of human actions and decisions. And in choosing to close those stores and choosing to shift those resources away from the communities that were built up in those areas. And then as Ms. Porter mentioned, redlining is very much a factor here in Fort Wayne. And one of my favorite stories to talk about, and I could go on for hours about it, is the Evie's grocery store. And the older folks in the room probably know that name. And for the younger folks, if I said the cornucopia on the south side of town, you probably recognize that. It was 66 years ago when Evie's opened up. And at the time when it opened up, it was the world's largest grocery store. It was like, they called it Ringling Brothers and Barnum and, all of that, but bigger. And in a little under 53 years, it went from the world's largest grocery store to an empty shell. And the community around it has suffered alongside that. And the steps that occurred for that to happen were not natural. Those were decisions made by people. And perhaps not with the impacts of the community in mind. And so calling it what it is the first step in properly addressing how to rectify that situation.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for that perspective. I messed up the slideshow, everybody. So for you on live stream, that is what happened. But I think I've got it up and ready to go now. And that's not how it looks on my screen, so I don't know why it's looking like that right there. I don't know. But we're going to continue. On my screen, it's just a big thing. So we're going to continue with these questions, of which there are quite a few. All right? And so I want to go on ahead and begin asking them. And this is for anyone. What strategies have you seen to be most effective in helping people change their behavior to include healthy eating and want to buy and use healthy food in their meals? Who wants to talk about that? Kathy wants to talk.
I do.
You can just join. You can just start talking.
Oh, that's okay. No, I was just simply going to say that you've got to make it affordable and easy accessed, and make it doable. So, even small changes that you can start with do add up. But I think once people know that, certain foods are causing inflammation, leading to chronic disease, you look differently at those foods. And over time, your taste buds morph. They definitely do. And you start developing a taste for the foods that love you back, as we say. So, yeah.
I'd like to add to that.
Okay, I want to add to that because I think for some of us, we are in one-on-one relationships with some of the people that we're talking about that are in need of changes in their food, is we have to kind of, again, rethink from their perspective why they can't do this, to see what we can do to eliminate those barriers. For example, when we first started doing the HEAL classes, it talked a lot about some of the healthy cooking things that you could do, and using different kinds of oils instead of a can of Crisco and things of that nature. Well, if you're on food stamps or you're going to get something from a food bank, you may not have access to those. So those of us who do control the grants and the programs can take miniature bottles and things like I've done, like here, and I can take balsamic vinegar that I may have paid $5.99 for, 32 ounces, and everybody in the class can have their own balsamic vinegar that they can take with them and do so. Don't judge me where I got my bottles, but you know where these little things come from too, okay? Okay, but same for spices, okay? If you, again, are on a very limited budget, one of the things that people don't tend to have on their own are the variety of fresh herbs and spices that they can do that can make green beans taste like, oh, I want some more of those, or things of that nature. So buy something in bulk, those of us who are controlling the dollars in the community, and gift them to the people who we're trying to impact to make a difference, okay? We can also help them in making better choices as they have more access to the information that we're giving them, including helping with access for transportation, okay?
All right, awesome. Okay,
Yeah.
just real
Yeah.
quick, we've got like a whole bunch of questions here, y'all.
I'll make it brief.
Okay.
But just to add on to what Ms. Porter said, understanding experiential leadership in these sorts of situations is really critical, because if you've never been food insecure and you've never had to go through that experience yourself and know what that feels like and how that impacts how you are able to process things, not just the physical effects, but like the mental and emotional effects of food insecurity and the other challenges that are possibly, also being dealt with at the same time, not just not having access to seasoning and whatnot, but like the family that was living in the hotel. We have some of the highest eviction rates in the country, and so many of our unhomed families are living in these hotels that don't have access to proper cooking supplies or refrigeration supplies, and that's also a challenge. So the best way to get people to eat healthier stuff is to start with understanding their situation, because I'm from a food insecure situation, and it wasn't that didn't want to eat healthier things, but there's so many other factors besides desire and cost that need to be taken into consideration.
Okay, piggybacking off of that, there's a question, what do you know about people who are food insecure but who do not live in a food desert? Anyone want to talk about that? Kathy, come on now.
Do you know what I think? I mean, we know what happens,
Go ahead.
that it's not, people obviously have all kinds of situations that affect income, and they could live outside of a food desert and certainly struggle. I think our job too in this conversation is to connect people to resources, and we have amazing food banks that are increasingly adding to the healthiness of the foods that they provide. And we also are a city actually I think the first in the state that does the double SNAP program, which means that for every $1 that you spend on produce, you will get another $1 to use for more produce. So, and we think that is, nutrition incentives are definitely a game changer. And some of the work that I do at Parkview Health actually involves also having physicians prescribe vegetables through the produce prescription program. So there's lots of neat things and safety nets that need to be operationalized.
Do you think our community and do you think as we expand our community and living becomes less affordable for some communities, would more food deserts develop? Or are we doing everything to prevent more of them and leading communities toward healthy choices? Andrea?
Yeah, thanks. I think that as we try to focus on, the food deserts, I think we will, as we see urban sprawl, as we see, the city going out as far as it can to its borders, I think we'll continue to see those large box stores being created and less, local stores within the neighborhoods or within the communities. So I do think that, it's very possible that we'll see those continue to grow because of our growth of our city. Absolutely.
Okay, but I want to follow up on that if I can, because I think that today we're talking about food deserts almost as a geographical phenomenon, but it's also a generational phenomenon, because the two parts of the population that are in critical need of access to food are senior citizens and college students, are emancipated teens. Senior citizens a lot of times are suffering in silence because they never had to ask for help before. This is the first time that they're living alone. They're a widower or something of that nature. And they're literally choosing to pay the electricity or put food on the table. If they have a pet, they're going to feed the pet before they feed themselves. And unless we ask and we uncover some of those things, we're not necessarily fixing the right problem for them with, oh, here's where you can go get things. If they can't get there, they still don't have it. College students are at that other end where it's nice to think that everybody can, get a $5 pizza and all. $5 might be what they've got to work with for the week. And unless some schools have, Purdue actually has a food pantry on campus. I think you're very familiar with what's happening with that, because they found that that's one of the things that is a detriment to the development of their minds and their ability to make decisions for their future. So I think, like you said, we need to look at all of this as we look at these strategies and things that are going to be what we think helpful, see where it's coming from them.
I've got a point I'd like to add. I'd like to turn that question actually around, to the audience and to everybody who's watching this. Our community isn't growing on its own. We are our community. What are we doing to be involved in the conversation and in the development of our community and, what's going into our neighborhoods or not? The community development has been working on the updated comprehensive plan. And if you haven't heard about the comprehensive plan, I would say start there. The comprehensive plan is the roadmap to our community and what we want it to be for the next 10 years. If we want to see less food deserts and we want to see more food in our neighborhoods and our communities, then get involved. Educate yourself. Our city government, county government does a great job of putting a lot of stuff online or making it accessible. And if it's something that you care about, just put a little time into it. That's how I got started in a lot of the stuff that I was doing, was just I wasn't seeing the things that I wanted to see, so I started going to public meetings, and I started going down to Citizen Square and, going from office to office and asking questions. A tip, be polite. These people are dealing with a lot of stuff and generally not as much pay or respect as they ought to, but they're our neighbors, and our friends. And, it's by working together that we can make this the community that we want it to be, which is why I'm guessing a lot of you are here today.
That is so true. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to move on to the next question, and this is for Terry. Oh, okay. I'm going to pose this question to you, and if you had something to piggyback on, then maybe you can also do that briefly as well. What is the best way for the youth to be involved? Okay,
Eat
so
more
as a teen, as a teen who doesn't support themselves financially and whose parents struggle as well, I felt helpless when trying to eat healthier.
I feel that. I really do, and I understand that. And it's challenging as a student, right? Like when you're trying to depend on those parents, and it's when you have to make decisions that aren't having these decisions made for you. When it comes to that access, though, it's asking those parents to bring it in if that's not a possibility, making those food choices in the school line, having those decisions. You get to choose what you take generally at the school lunch line, right? Like, it's been a while since I've been in school, but making those options and taking those options when you can. But it's challenging because they can be more expensive too, and it's not an easy fix. For me, though, I love seeing the students come through our farm at Johnny May Farm and showing them what different things are. People who describe themselves as hating broccoli suddenly love it when they get to pick it directly off the plant. And those are some easy ways to be able to incorporate too. We have seeds at our farm. We have Purdue Extension gives away so many seeds. We can show you how to grow stuff. It can be pretty easy. We can tell you how to be able to be successful with it as well. Asking teachers too for community gardens. I know that there are so many teachers out there that would love to support students that want to grow vegetables, and we can help you with that as well. So I'm sad that I don't have an answer for how to get more vegetables into your house through your parents, but there are other outlets to be able to help support you as well.
I think you actually touched on it though, because between the seeds and things that you offer, that's how I got started growing things myself. Trick, don't try and plant anything by a walnut tree, it won't grow. But you can save your containers from your cottage cheese or from, you know, the carry-out roasted chickens and egg cartons and whatnot, and you can plant and grow stuff in your own area. I mean, even I started my first community garden when I lived in an efficiency apartment, and I didn't have any dirt that I could grow in. I mean, we did end up getting a community garden going down the block, but I started just with containers, bowls and cups and Tupperware and things like that on the, you know, windowsill. And there's so many ways that you can do container gardening and alternative things. And, you know, between the stuff that are, you know, being given away either at your school or at, you know, Purdue Extension, I've helped friends start whole gardens just saving seeds out of the food that they were already eating, you know, and you can find tons of videos on Instagram and TikTok about how to, you know, grow your food scraps. And even just starting with like herbs and stuff is a great way to add nutrition and flavor to your food and micronutrients. And they're really easy to grow, and just keep trying.
Thank you so much. That was a great question from someone who is actually wanting to live healthy and kind of feels fenced in and not able to do so. So I appreciate those responses. We have just a few moments left, and I have a whole bunch of questions. So I'm gonna combine some of them. There are several questions that have to do with the city grocery store that's going to open, and so I'm gonna throw them at you, Andrea.
Okay.
And then you can kind of succinctly answer with what you can talk about now.
Okay.
Okay. So what part of 2023 will the grocery store open? That's one. Let me get this. Okay, a grocery store in Southeast Fort Wayne is great, but it will only be convenient for a piece of Southeast. How will it be chosen, the location, and how many will be built to include all food desert areas? What can be done at the city level to encourage use of vacant lots to grow food? There are many obstacles to that, and I'll leave that to this. Okay, so can you answer all of that, Andrea?
Sure, I can definitely
Okay.
start with well, they're all kind of complicated. So we have set a goal and we've picked a date. We're actually really trying to target the end of 2022. I think that's our year right now, 2022, to open a portion of the grocery store. That's a goal that we've put together. We have like 3 different phases of what we want to create or help create. And so I think the grocery store portion, the mayor's asked us to give him a date and we did. And so we're gonna work towards that. I think that the entire grocery store will be fully functioning in 2023. Let's see here.
Any location?
We have targeted a location, yes. And the way that we picked that location during the work on the Southeast strategy, we looked at a lot of different census tracts. We looked at areas of town that, provided different sorts of data. And the location that we're targeting revealed that it was low access to food, low access to transportation. So, it would become some sort of community, neighborhood, market grocery store that people can walk to. And that was very important because as all of the colleagues up here have talked about, if you don't have access to transportation, getting healthy food from a mile, 2 miles away is just not realistic when you're trying to carry all of your bags and groceries and tend to your children. So if that was
Andrea, can you
important.
be more specific about the location or not really?
No, I cannot.
Okay, all right, okay.
How many, one of the things that people talk about and like why we can't get a grocery store in any of the food deserts is when we look at those large box store models, they very much look at their, what kind of revenue, what kind of percentage are they going to get, what are their returns. And so what we're hoping is as the first grocery store opens and we move through kind of our red period where we're maybe not necessarily driving any revenue to the break even and then eventually maybe making a little bit of money, we want to reinvest that back into the second grocery store or additional resources that are offered through the grocery store. So this is not a one fix. This isn't going to fix every issue that these food deserts have created, but it's the first start. It's the first step. City level, to grow food. We've talked about this, Terry and I, about, we have city-owned properties and what can we do with them? And there are people that are interested in doing some urban gardening or urban farming. I think that's a more appropriate term. And
I
so,
want to
yeah,
step in just a second on
for
that.
sure.
Just because there's land available doesn't mean it's easy. You need a lot
Right.
more other things. So there's a lot of things to consider beyond just access to.
Exactly. And that is something that we've talked about is how can we try that? Can we pilot a program? Could we put something together? What is needed? Because we don't want to, you don't want to give somebody a piece of property that all of a sudden now they have to pay taxes on and it's burdensome and you can't just put up a garage because you can't just put up a garage or a shed. There's issues that we have to work through. And so, I'm definitely committed to solving those problems, and I think that, through our relationship with Purdue Fort Wayne and the extension, we've seen a lot of really things that I never thought we would see. It's been exciting, and, we do have, as our conversation is growing with the grocery store, we've talked about how can we collaborate, what can we do, what if there's a service that Johnny May Farms is offering, we don't need to duplicate it maybe, or maybe it is a really great thing and we need to duplicate it over and over and over again. So I know I've answered questions without any answers and I apologize.
That's government.
But,
Okay, well,
yeah.
maybe the specifics will come in Mayor Henry's announcement.
Yes.
When is that
absolutely.
announcement coming?
Honestly, we are finalizing or working through our MOUs and our agreements, and once those are signed, but I have no date to tell you.
Okay, it's coming, it's coming,
It's
okay.
coming, yes, I promise.
We have a couple of questions about culture. Reverend Lake, also Professor Lake, talked about the obstacle of culture winning the battle over eating healthier. And then, a couple of questions about that. What ideas do we have about overcoming some of the cultural barriers among African Americans, Latinos, that play a role in this? Kathy wants to
I can
answer
pass
that.
it on to, I just want to say, interestingly enough, I put a recipe in the Art Healing Kitchen for collard greens, and I used a smoked neck because I knew that that's what, that the flavor of that cured meat was important, I felt, but I wanted to do a healthy version of it. Well, I had several of our Healing Kitchen facilitators. I can think of one, Liz Murphy from New Covenant. Kathy, we don't cook like that anymore. So I thought it was really interesting that she corrected me, like, you don't have to put that in there for us. We are learning new ways of cooking. And I think about, if you look back at the African American heritage information, you know what, people, hundreds of years ago did not eat that rich. It was grown off the land, and I think it's only in the last probably 50 years, maybe more, but where things have really gone haywire, and we've used so much fat and so much salt in our foods. But again, taste buds adapt, but to be open to that, I thought it was just a great conversation.
But I want to go along with that with the culture and our food is we are so multicultural now in our community. when we were doing the Healing Garden and some of the programs like that, we now have long beans at the garden project. We're just seeing them in the major grocery stores because the influx of the Burmese population in this community has given a way to encouraging us to eat some of the things that they had been eating. We'll probably see some other changes coming along the way. So I think if we look at the grocery stores, if we look at the garden projects and the things of that nature, not just on a black-white basis, but in a multicultural basis, you'll see that all ships will rise with that. African Americans will find things that they didn't know that they could eat, and other races will find that, oh, yeah, that does taste good. You know, we put that together, and we are a community. We have to start working like it.
I just want to say, can I say real quick? I just want to thank St. Joe Foundation for starting this conversation way back in 2014, and for doing all the good work all those years on HEAL, and for doing the vulnerable population study, because I really think that was a very sophisticated, deep study that really showed our community a whole lot of new things. So kudos to them. They fund so many good things, and yeah, I just want to shout that out.
Yes, and that was, if you saw in the credits, that was where the statistic about the 110,000 or 1/3 of the population living in a food desert area, that was a study that was commissioned by the St. Joe Foundation and actually conducted by Purdue University. We've got a lot of questions. We will not get to all of them, or we would be here till like 3 o'clock, but I will ask a few more, and then I think there are a few that could be answered easily even with our vendor tables. Now with stores, with more stores offering home delivery, would this help with the food desert issue?
I would like to ask if anybody knows how expensive it is to have food delivery. It's a premium, right? Like the prices are increased, the delivery fees. So no, I don't think that's a solution to food deserts, because you're paying for that premium.
And they don't want to call it redlining, but there are some places that won't deliver in some neighborhoods.
Yeah, and just to say really briefly, Health Visions Midwest, we had actually wanted to create a program where we would pay with some grant funds for the actual delivery fee. And that we couldn't work around the logistics of the online ordering system because a credit card is needed for each individual person, and it was a nightmare. And so there are solutions that you think of that, well, why don't we just do this? Or what about this? Or what about that? And you come across all of these obstacles that kind of prevent them, or make them more difficult. I shouldn't say prevent any solutions, because we're going to have solutions. We're coming up with some, but it makes it really difficult. Real quick,
Just
Kathy,
real quick,
and then
I just want to
Ani.
say that SNAP has a online pilot where you can order groceries. I'm not sure if it's across the U.S., but it is coming, and it's just an online portal for ordering groceries. And there's 2 companies that are coming to the forefront that are trying to do food delivery with the consideration of the food desert issue.
SNAP means Supplemental Nutrition Access Program. Did I get that right? Okay, I think I got it right. It's some supplemental nutrition stuff. Okay. Okay, real quick.
So it kind of touches on some of the things that we've actually just talked about, but in my experience, this is a complicated problem, therefore the solution necessarily is going to be complicated. It's not going to be simple, it's not going to be straightforward, but it's absolutely going to make sense and be practical. And the last decade plus of work and research that I've been doing into different models and options, not only across the nation, but also internationally and historically, has led me to what I think is a really interesting concept that is right now being piloted in Denver. And I learned of it from Dr. John Eichard and his writings, and that is a community food utility, which, much like the cooperative grocery stores, the store that is being started, You know, how do you change the culture and get people engaged? And for me, you know, I started growing food because I wanted to take back that control and that ownership and that power of being able to feed myself, because I felt like I didn't have it anymore. And a community food utility can be chartered specifically for public benefit, and then it's done by us and it's ran within the community, and we can establish the rules and the guidelines, and then it creates job opportunities, which gives a sense of empowerment and ownership. And, you know, when I first started, you know, getting young people involved in gardens, you know, the parents are like, well, my kids will never eat these things. And it's amazing that kids will eat a whole lot of stuff, sometimes things you don't want them to eat, like dirt and other leaves, but if you get them to grow things and they have that sense of ownership of, you know, doing it themselves, then that really is what I've seen to be the most effective way to get people really engaged and doing stuff. Because once you start growing, you get hooked.
Awesome, awesome. So we've got a lot of things that our panelists are experienced in and have done, and so these are some great ideas. I want to ask 2 more questions, then I'm going to do a speed round through some of the questions for myself, and then we're going to release. So there are a couple of questions here geared toward Denise, your comments in the documentary about us working with some of the dollar stores and corner stores and having them be places where people can actually get these fresh fruits and vegetables. So working with these existing providers. How is anyone doing that now? Is anyone trying to work with the gas stations and the dollar stores or those businesses to make this happen?
I've had people talk about they're going to try to do it. Sometimes you need to make sure if you're getting to a corporate decision maker, if you're getting to a district manager or something of that nature. But it's no different than the Girl Scouts setting up outside of a Walmart or someplace, you know, to sell cookies. You should be able to sell fresh produce inside of someplace or outside of someplace that does not sell those things. And I would think a Dollar Tree or a Dollar General or we have a local owner of a family Dollar Tree would be at least interested in having the conversation, lest they look like we don't care about your neighborhood.
Well, and that model though is challenging because in Fort Wayne, our zoning doesn't allow people to put up a fresh vegetable stand in front of storefronts. So it's changing some of those policies to be able to allow that access.
Okay, I'm going to ask one more question, then I'm going to do a speed round. And I have to ask this one because if I don't ask it, somebody's going to think that I intentionally didn't ask it because it's kind of putting us on the hook here. So it says, Dr. Tim Lake made the connection of the sick care system or health care system, the sick care system or health care system to the economic capital of having healthy community partners. What are Parkview, St. Joe Foundation, Health Visions, and the city of Fort Wayne doing to engage and change public policy to change systems so that low-income people can thrive and be, it's over. How are you engaging our legislators, promoting the Build Back Better Act, etc.? Well, I want to say for Health Visions, we actually have an organization called the Allen County Health Equity Coalition, okay? And if you don't know about about ACHEC, then please visit our table to get more information. But it is a coalition of social service leaders, healthcare advocates, just various community leaders throughout the area that come together to talk about these policy issues. We actually had a policy specialist, I'm just going to give him that title because I can't remember his title, on this morning because we had a meeting right before this meeting at 10 a.m. And he was from Indianapolis and he talked about the various bills that are on the floor that are being discussed right now in the General Assembly and how we can rally our representatives and come together and help them to make decisions that really reflect the communities that they represent. So that's one of the things we do. We also do things like this, where we want to bring to light and make people aware of the issues that are going on. So that's our role, is to bring education, awareness, and enlightenment, to bring people together, leaders together to do those types of things. So I don't know, you want to talk about Parkview?
Oh, sure, yeah. Actually, we are a nonprofit health system, and one thing I want to say is, why I'm so proud to be associated with them is because our mission is to create healthier communities. I mean, we do have a medical system for decades that is more of a sick care system. So you go to your doctor and you get the med, right? Where we really believe, again, that we need to change things upside down, and food is your medicine. And we, for the last 8 years have been investing in the HEAL initiative with St. Joe Foundation and many other. We actually run some grants now, and we have kind of a fresh food pharmacy pilot going on at the Rendalia campus so that we can provide medically tailored groceries to those. But again, we're trying to also pilot food insecurity screening, and so we know that our populace is not healthy, and we need to, work with structural changes for sure to bring change so that we actually keep people well longer. And I feel certain that we'll see it happen. Hopefully, in the next decade or two. It's just going to take a while, but there's a whole field called lifestyle medicine that is burgeoning, and it really is helping physicians and clinicians bring the good news that chronic disease doesn't even need to happen.
And Kathy,
yeah.
just to piggyback off of what you were talking about, there's not a representative up here on the stage from the St. Joe Foundation, but since they were named in this question, I do want to speak slightly on their behalf.
Oh, yeah.
Meg Dissler's in the audience there. And so the St. Joe Foundation, they've done a number of things to bring awareness to this issue. For instance, like we were just saying, they did commission the study about vulnerable populations. And there was that when it was released in 2018. They invited community leaders to come and learn more about this issue. And so that was a way of advocating for people who are underserved. They've also co-sponsored the HEAL program, and someone had a question about that. HEAL stands for Healthy Eating, Active Living. For more information about the HEAL program, there's a table outside that you can get a whole bunch of information. They are now also doing Double Up. They've got a grant for that, and the Double Up is where people who are on SNAP, they can go to the grocery store, or they can go to various outlets that are participating, and they can purchase fruits and vegetables, and that amount will be doubled. I think I summed that up kind of good, but Mary can talk more about that. So they've been on the front lines doing quite a bit of this in recent years. Now, Andrea, you want to speak for the city?
Well, I was going to say, one of the city's roles, we don't know the grocery store business, that's not something that we know, but we do know that we need to be the convener. And so many of the institutions that you spoke of, we've been in conversation with, and they're part of, this, I guess, whole conversation that we're having with, who's going to own the grocery store and how are we going to run it. And so, from the perspective of this, first project, they've all been engaged, and people are definitely saying, I want to be part of this. I just don't know what I can do. And some of those people might come and stock the shelves so that we can meet our deadline to open the doors when we want to open it. And somebody might be, willing to sponsor, a cooking kitchen or something like that. There's been a lot of people, a lot of organizations that have raised their hand and said, I don't know what I can do, but I want to help. So there's a lot of activity.
All right, I'm going to do a lightning round of some of the questions that we have left. I want to thank our panelists for all that you've done and how you've prepared, and you've brought some enlightenment There are a number of questions here that we did not get to from our live streamers and from the audience. Is anyone considering hydroponic growing systems? I am going to refer the person who asked that question. Hopefully you're here in person, because if you are, you can go to the Purdue Extension table, and Terry's going to talk about hydroponic stuff, and Jared Blanchard, and they can talk about that with you. They can also talk about if a high school had its own greenhouse, what would be the best foods to grow? That is a Purdue Extension question all the way, so I'm going to leave that to them. I told you what the HEAL program stands for. What strategies are in the works for fresh vegetables and fruit in the wintertime? There's currently a year-round farm market, and they recently moved. I think where are they now?
They're still at Parkview Field.
They're still at Parkview Field. So there's a year-round market. That's one of the efforts that's happening now for year-round. And of course, if the grocery store gets going that the city has established, that will be year-round. Condra Ridley is not here today. She was in the video, but Utopian Community Grocery is an effort that was created by people in the community for the community. And so they are obviously a year-round effort, and that's a unique experience. So if you have questions about that, I suggest that you look up Condra, stop by the Utopian Growth. I think they are shut down just for momentarily because of some different issues probably with COVID, but look them up and reach out to Utopian Grocery about that as well. Are there efforts to teach healthy cooking? Yes. That is, the HEAL program has been doing that, teaching healthy cooking. There are grants available for organizations to get funds to do that. We've also worked with the school system. So if you're interested in that, go out to the HEAL table. And what are some ways to spread awareness about mobile food pantries? We didn't get to that. Why do some people choose to eat unhealthy? Well, we were talking about the different impediments to that in the documentary. And so there's a complicated issue. And what can changes in legislation for SNAP or other health issues at the federal and state levels, how can changes in legislation support the good local work that's happening? I suggest that you stop by our vendors after this, ask them some of these really great questions. Hopefully you're in person here. If not, you can hit us up on website, give us a call, and ask some of these great questions. Again, I am so grateful for those who came out in this cold weather. I'm grateful for those who came to us on live stream. For those who are in-house, please, 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 please fill out our survey that you received in your packet. Leave it in the basket at the registration table. We would really like to have that and get your feedback on this event. If you're live streaming, you will get that survey in an email. Please fill it out online. It takes about 2 minutes. And so that's not that much time. I want to thank all of the people who participated in this. Some people participated and didn't even know that they were participating. We were just rolled up with some videotape footage. Well, we asked, of course. And they didn't know community, Come As You Are, Community Church is here. Community Food Harvest. I'm saying that wrong.
Community Harvest.
Community Harvest Food Bank. We rolled up on them with some video and took some footage, and so all of those people are great and we're really passionate about this topic. You guys are passionate about it, and so we thank you for coming. Please, please fill out the survey. Please, please get a cup of coffee, get some snacks to go, take them with you. Does anyone have any last words? Susan, did you want to say anything? Thank you for being here. Thank you all. Anybody up here want to leave us with something stellar?
It's complicated.
It's a complicated issue. Thanks again, and we are so grateful that you came to our first conversation.
I'm going to try to catch Sharon real quick. Or Susan.